Hello everybody, welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're cracking on with more of my soundtracks. We're just going to pick up exactly where we left off in the letter B. Little more to say really, just going to crack on, whisk through them, see how many we can get through. One thing actually to note before I start, redbubble.com. Right, cracking on straight away with, this is a release from One Way Static Records, who I wasn't too familiar with until they released The Burning. Now this is an interesting one. This is a soundtrack by Rick Wakeman of insert progressive rock band here. Was it Yes he was in? I might have just made myself look a complete tit, but I feel like he was in a band like that. And anyways, he was brought on board to do the music for The Burning, which is a slasher movie from 1980 or 81, and it ended up on the Video Nasties list in the UK. Follows the story of Cropsey, the famous urban legend with his shears and his hat. Kind of Friday the 13th-y this one, but I get the feeling they were probably being made at the same time, so we can't hold that against it. But yeah, fantastic movie. As slashers go, this is one of the better ones. Gave birth to quite a lot of big stars as well, this movie, both in front of and behind the camera. So yeah, this is a nice release, this. You got the Cropsey gatefold there. The only problem is it's quite tight to open, and consequently it's started to rip a little bit inside, which is a little bit disappointing. But we've got a couple of release notes just on the inside there. This is, I think this variant was limited to 500 copies. I've got copy 118, and I get the feeling this is just of this particular release, because there's a few different kinds, and this one here is half orange, half clear. If you can hear weird noises, just because the dog's got a little squishy toy thing. But yeah, this looks really cool when it's on the turntable. I can't lie, the first time I pulled it out like that and I was like, oh my god, it's liquid filled, and then I tipped it and I was like, oh, it's not. But still, nevertheless, that's very, very cool indeed. You've got Cropsey on the label on that side, and then you've got the tracks and everything on that side just there. And music wise, can't complain at all. It's a fantastically composed soundtrack, as you would expect coming from Rick Wakeman. Manages to capture the 80s slasher vibe really, really well. So yeah, highly recommended. That is The Burning. And the next one, I believe, is also One Way Static. Yes, it is, and it's another Video Nasty. This is The Boogeyman. Now, the music on this is by a guy called Tim Krog. And I don't know if I'm making this up, but somewhere in the back of my mind, it tells me that this is the first, if not one of the first, entirely synthesized soundtracks. There's no real, I know that sounds bad, but you know what I mean. There's no strings on this, there's no guitars, it's all synthesizers. And it sounds fantastic. It's a brilliant soundtrack. So yeah, supernatural slasher movie, this one. I think we've got some boobs in here, so just prepare yourself. Yes. Oh, they're covered in blood as well. The BBFC won't like that. That's a particularly nasty moment from the film. Don't know what it is with these. And again, look, the inside of that one started to rip. Just try and cover a modesty a little bit. Don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of a rip on the inside of that one as well. I don't know if it's just the gatefolds that One Way Static use that causes that, but yeah, disappointing. Anyway, there's a couple of interesting things in here. So first of all, we've got the vinyl record, which is on suitably green, garish vinyl with this black blob in the middle. Nothing particularly interesting to note about that. However, I feel like I've shown this off loads, but if you're new to this, please let me know if you've encountered this before, because I have record collector friends who still have never seen a release with this kind of thing in. So when you open the gatefold, it squeaks. CJ! Just had to hide the squeaky toy. Right, so we've got liner notes and everything on that piece there, but then there's what they call a CD record, and it specifically says, this is a CD record that must be played on your turntable. Do not put in your CD player. Comes in a little sachet. You open it up, and that thin grey strip around the outside is the content. All of this on the inside is just blank. And it's an original radio spot for the movie, which that's just an incredibly cool and slightly unnecessary addition that I'm really happy is there. So yeah, like I say, I've never come across a record with anything like that in before. If you have, please let me know, because I just find it really, really interesting that they decided to include such an obscure little addition. But yeah, that is The Boogeyman from One Way Static Records. The next one isn't a soundtrack as such, but I just throw it in because it's John Carpenter. John Carpenter Lost Themes Volume 2. This is music that he's composed. It's either it's for films that he hasn't used, or it's just some instrumental work he's been putting together. But yeah, Volume 1 I don't have, Volume 2 I do. And what I find interesting about this is that it says composed, performed and engineered by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter and Daniel Davies, who is the son of the Kinks guitarist Dave Davies. And I believe they worked on the soundtrack to Village of the Damned together, the 90s one. Interesting little tidbit there, with the Kinks being one of my favourites. Really cool sleeve there. You've got John Carpenter's face on that side, you've got the title on that side, and I believe this is just on black vinyl. Yeah. Some really, really cool music in here. In fact, I think they're on Spotify, John Carpenter's albums, and I highly recommend them. They're really, really good listens. So yeah, John Carpenter's Lost Themes Volume 2. Back onto soundtracks this time, and we are straight into Giallo territory with Bruno Nicolai's score for The Case of the Scorpion's Tail, directed by Sergio Martino. First thing to note on here is, again, I feel like there was one in the last video that had this, but the yellow cover, again, very bright, very Giallo appropriate. This one stars, is it Anita Strindberg? I know that's George Hilton. Is it Anita Strindberg? Anita Strindberg, I got it right. Two Giallo mainstays. It's a really, really good movie. It's one of Martino's best, in my opinion. And yeah, so you've got that beautiful artwork on the front. This is a double LP, so you've got quite a lot of tracks packed in on the back there. We can open up the gatefold. Can't remember if there's boobs. There's not boobs, but there is some very, very menacing looking faces inside there. And I think these are just on black vinyl. If they are, I'll only pull the one out just so because we all know what black vinyl looks like. Yes, it's on black vinyl. Very nice, vibrant label. Really heavy as well. This is proper thick. Feels 180 gram vinyl, this. The music itself, I can't remember all too well, but I do enjoy Bruno Nicolai's music, so I'm absolutely certain it'll be wonderfully eerie. So yeah, that's The Case of the Scorpion's Tail. And the next up, we've got more animal-based Giallo with Ennio Morricone's score to Dario Argento's The Cat of Nine Tails. I'm aware that this has a slightly, I was going to say better, it might not be better, it just has a slightly different release. There's, because this is, I'm assuming, an Italian thing with it having the Italian title. But yeah, I'm aware that there's, I think it's a double LP, this the newer one, but this is just a single. And it's one of my favourite Morricone soundtracks. It's very creepy, this one. For a movie that I honestly am not 100% on. Hey, speaking of yellow, love the gatefold on this thing. You've got tons of information and posters and things. And I enjoy Cat o' Nine Tails, but compared to the rest of Argento's work, I do find it a little bit... The word isn't coming to me. It's just, I maybe don't enjoy it as much as the likes of Deep Red and Tenebrae, his other Charlie. That one's just on black vinyl as well. So yeah, that's a really good one. The music is probably the highlight of that movie. It's got some fantastically tense sequences in it, and it's all helped along perfectly by Ennio Morricone's music. And I'm trying to think if this came before or after Four Flies on Grey Velvet, because if it came after it, I believe this is the last film that Morricone scored for Argento. Because he was meant to do Deep Red, but then they had a dispute and he ended up getting Goblin to do it instead. I'm plucking this from the back of my mind, it may not be true, but I feel like it is. So yeah, that's Cat o' Nine Tails, Dario Argento and Ennio Morricone. Now, the world is against me, the dishwasher's speaking to me, the bin men are here, but that's not going to stop me showing off this beauty. This is one of my absolute favourites in my collection. Yeah, that absolutely got too loud for me, I think. It's typical, isn't it? All morning it's dead. The second I put the bloody camera on, everything kicks off. Nevertheless, we have Dawn of the Dead, George Romero, Goblin, library music, you know, Dario Argento producing tangentially. It's a marvellous film. It's my favourite film of all time, and it's got a banging soundtrack comprised on this set of records from Waxwork Records. This one is. Now this just contains the Goblin music. There's none of the library tracks on here, which is a shame. However, if you were to put all the library tracks onto records, you'd end up with a massive box set. So, yeah, I'm more than happy with this. I've got the CDs in the Second Sight Blu-ray box set anyway, and I've got this lovely record, which has the nicest artwork I think I've ever seen on any record. It's stunningly beautiful. Got back there with the gun on and the track listing. Ready for the inside? Oh yeah, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. No splits in here, baby. This is high quality stuff. And then these are on extremely pretty splattery coloured vinyl, if I remember rightly. Yes, it's like a greeny bluey splatter. The colour scheme doesn't really match the film particularly well. However, it is, as its own little package, incredibly cohesive in its art style and its colour, its use of colour and everything. So yeah, it's beautifully bright and garish, and I absolutely adore it. The other record's just the same, so I won't pull it out. But that is the marvellous soundtrack to Dawn of the Dead by Waxwork Records. Possibly my, maybe not music-wise, but packaging-wise, my favourite record that I own. At least it's up there. So that is Dawn of the Dead. Back into Giallo territory, we've got the first one from Arrow Records. This is the soundtrack to Death Walks on High Heels by Stelvio Cipriani. I never know how to say his name properly. But yeah, this is one of my favourite Giallo movies. I think it's beautifully convoluted, but still makes quite a lot of sense in a bizarre Giallo kind of way. And the music is brilliant as well. Who's this directed by? Luciano Ercoli, because he did Death Walks at Midnight as well, and The Forbidden Photos of Lady Above Suspicion. All great films, but this is the only soundtrack of his that I own. Open up the gatefold. Plenty of lovely pictures from the movie. And is this on black vinyl? I remember it being on black vinyl, but I may be wrong. I'm wrong! It's on red vinyl. Translucent red vinyl. The other disc might not be. Oh, hang on, there's something else in here. Ah, liner notes. There we go. Then we've got, and then he said Edwidge Fenech. It's not Edwidge Fenech. What's her name? Neves Navarro. That's her name. Anglicised as Susan Scott, I think, in the credits to that movie. But she's a highlight of any film that she's in. She's brilliant. And I'll quickly pull out the other record just in case it's a different colour, although I'm fairly certain that it is, yeah, it's just red again, so I won't pull that one out. But that is, I've got another one from Arrow coming soon, which is the soundtrack to Pieces, which is a very gory slasher movie, but this is not. This is a lovely slice of Italian giallo with a fantastic final soundtrack. So that is Death Walks on High Heels. Oh, going in for a bit of class now. And I can never pronounce the guy's name who composed it. Pino Donaggio, is that right? This is his soundtrack to Don't Look Now, the film with Donald Sutherland in it. And it's a very bizarre movie, but this soundtrack is absolutely stunning. It's beautifully composed. It's maybe the soundtrack that I would go to most often, or at least one of the ones I go to most often, just because it's beautiful. Oh, don't scare me like that. It's absolutely stunning, as is the artwork for this. It kind of reminds me of a picture book. The style I've gone for there. You've got the girl in the red coat running away. Obviously set in Venice, and they've captured that really, really nicely. And a little birdie tells me this is red vinyl as well. It is. This is solid red, this one though. You've got the ball on that side that the girl drops in the lake, and then you've got just a blood splatter on that side. It's a film that kind of divides people, so it's kind of up to you if you fancy watching it, but I do recommend it if you're into... It's not so much a horror film, it's like a thriller about a couple getting over the death of their own child, that just happens to have some scary moments in it. So yeah, disturbing little movie that, Don't Look Now. The same can't be said for Dracula AD 1972. The Hammer film that was set in the hip 70s, where they brought Christopher Lee straight into swinging London, and it again, it divides people. It's got a very jazzy soundtrack from what I remember. Stephanie Beacham in it as well. But yeah, I don't really like the artwork on this one, I have to be honest. It looks... just the colours they've used seem a bit clashy, but yeah, that's not a big issue. And then I think if I pull this out, yeah, it's just on black vinyl, this one. And appropriately, you've got a lovely lady on that side, but then you've got Concord on the label on that side. Very 1970s. So yeah, that's not one of my favourite Dracula Hammer films, I have to be honest. However, I know my friend Joel really enjoys it, so this one goes to you, Joel. Just had to cut that there because I struggled to get the record back in the sleeve. But that is Dracula AD 1972. Dog, will you get your wet nose off my records? We're back with John Carpenter with not a horror soundtrack, but one of his best films. This is Escape from New York, starring Kurt Russell and the voice of Jamie Lee Curtis. Adrian Barbeau's in this as well. Yeah, this is a great movie, like a kind of action thriller, with one of his best soundtracks. I'm not going to say it's his best soundtrack, but it's certainly up there with the best of his synth work. It's a long one as well, as you can see. It's another double album, and if I remember rightly, this is, yeah, just on black vinyl. But as you can see, the label there is from the poster of the movie, and you've got the Statue of Liberty's head on that side, which is, again, taken straight off the front of the poster. So yeah, that is Escape from New York. And then we're back in with the horror soundtracks with the soundtrack to The Evil Dead. Now, this is A Nightmare Reimagined, so I believe this is re-recorded. So it's not the original music. However, it is still a fantastic listen with some great artwork from Graham Humphreys. He never disappoints. You've got the front cover there, you've got the back cover there with all the tracks on, and then one of my favourite gatefolds in my collection. Wah! Blood and guts and goo and gore. Look at that. I could look at that forever. It's so beautifully put together. And the records, I believe, are on green vinyl. Hey, my memory serves me well. Green vinyl. Solid green. In fact, I think, again, I'll just pull it out to make sure it's no different, but I get the feeling it's on green vinyl as well. Yes, it is. It's Joe LaDuca is the guy who did the soundtrack. I forgot that name. I didn't want to say it in case I got it wrong, but his name's staring at me on the label. So credit to Joe for some fantastic music. And then the dishwasher interrupts me again. Right, John Carpenter, his best soundtrack in my opinion for his best movie in my opinion, and that's going to divide people a lot. But this is The Fog, which I think is one of the best, if not the best, ghost story ever put to film. I love this movie with a passion. I saw it at just the right age where it scared the shit out of me, and it still does now when I watch it. It's still incredibly creepy, and the soundtrack to this is just absolutely indescribably wonderful. This is just, I think this is from Silver Screen Records. I know Waxwork put this out, and ideally I'd like the Waxwork release as well, because it's absolutely beautiful. But this is aptly on foggy white vinyl. I feel like the other one's on green vinyl, so I'll pull that one out. But if I was going to recommend a movie from this video, it would be The Fog. If you haven't seen The Fog, go and watch The Fog. Studio Canal released a wonderful 4K box set of it, which I think is still in print, so it shouldn't be too hard to get hold of. And if you like a good creepy ghost story, then you can't really get better than The Fog. Some people don't like it. I think it's perfect. And then we seem to be revisiting the same people over and over again. This is Dario Argento's film, Ennio Morricone's soundtrack to Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Now this is one of my favourite releases as well. We're quite heavy on the quality in this video. They've gone again with this, I feel like I said Japanese in the last video. I think it's Japanese. They've gone with the Japanese style on this one, which I really, really like. Now, interestingly, this is the only record I have which is engraved. There's 2 records in here, but only 3 sides of music. The 4th side is has an engraving on it. You've got the creepy cherub mask fucker in the middle. And it's on crystal clear vinyl, from what I remember. I'll just pull the last one out, though, because I'll try and show it off. You've got the music on that side, and then the other side, which you do not play, has, and it's not going to show up very well at all, 4 flies etched into it. Oh, hang on. You can kind of see it there. You can see the legs around the outside if I spin it. But yeah, it's really, really clear to the naked eye, and it's a wonderful touch. And like I say, it's the only one, the only record I have that is engraved, so it's quite a special one for me at the minute. And that one is from Death Waltz Records, who have they put out some fantastic stuff in the last few years. If I remember rightly, the bird with the crystal plumage that I showed off in the last video was Death Waltz as well. That's 4 Flies on Grey Velvet. And then the second last one for this video, we're going classic. We're going Friday the 13th, part 2. Not part 1, I don't know on part 1, weirdly. Or any of the others, just inexplicably I've got part 2, which is one of my favourites in the series, so it's quite appropriate really. Now the thing with the Friday the 13th soundtracks is, with the exception of a few, once you've heard one, you've kind of heard most of them, because Harry Manfredini, bless him, and his fantastic music, but it's very hard to tell each film apart, with the exception of like the opening theme to part 3, which is obviously very, very different. But nonetheless, I will get them all eventually. I've just ended up starting with part 2 for some strange reason. Now this is pretty vinyl, if I remember. This is blue and red splatter. Hey, I was right. Yeah, this is great. And then you've got on the other side a mattress with a hole in, which is taken from A Murder in the Film, which incidentally is also taken from a Mario Bava film called A Bay of Blood, also called Bloodbath, also called Twitch of the Death Nerve, which is a fantastic giallo from I think 1970 or 1972, or 1971, why not? And it yeah, has a couple of scenes in it that it directly inspired stuff in Friday the 13th Part 2. So go and watch them both. And then lastly, we're going to end with, again, a classic slasher, which I don't have the first soundtrack to, but I do have the second one. This is Halloween 2. Which is decidedly more synthy than the original soundtrack was. The original was almost entirely on piano. But yeah, this is an early Death Waltz release. You can kind of tell because they had a distinct kind of style with the back covers, I find, Death Waltz, the early ones. It was just black with a few screenshots. But yeah, really, really cool artwork. This one comes with a massive poster of Michael Myers' face. But it also comes with, which is now on the floor, the record, which is on Misty Vinyl, and I've just checked, and yes, it does have Mr. Sandman on it, which is a bonus. So yeah, not my favourite of the Halloween films. Do you know Halloween? I don't really rate as much as Friday the 13th, which is I don't know. People always seem to scowl when I say that because Friday the 13th doesn't take itself quite as seriously, I don't think, but it's kind of why I like it more. But it's one of the better ones, and the soundtrack is suitably creepy. So that is the last one for today. That is Halloween 2, released by Death Waltz Records. I didn't realise how many soundtracks I had until we got to the end of part 2, and I'm only up to the letter H. But yeah, I will be cracking on with this again at some point. If you've enjoyed it, let me know. If you haven't, fuck off. Let me know what you think of the things that I've shown off, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.